Hello, everyone. Your host, Caleb Masters here. And two things. Firstly, thank you so much for tuning into our 2021 Oscars special. Second thing, the audio for today's recording came back a little differently than the audio capturing experience through Zencastr really seemed at the time. So the audio quality may differ from what you're used to hearing in our show, particularly on our special guest end, just again due to some technical difficulties that occurred with the software we were using. I apologize for this inconvenience, and I hope you can get past this uneven audio quality and enjoy the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cinematic Schematic, the official podcast of the cinematropolis.com, your home to thoughtful conversations on film. Today, we will be talking about this Sunday night's big game night for Hollywood. That is right, ladies and gentlemen. I can't believe it. The Oscars in 2021 are finally happening. I mean, really, they're finally happening. We had to wait an extra couple of months for them to actually occur because there were not enough movies to hand awards to. I kid, but yeah, we are here to talk about the 2021 Oscars this week. We're going to be just diving into our predictions for what to expect in the show, what will win, what we would like to see win instead. And hey, it's going to be a little weird this year being in the post-COVID reality. So it's going to be interesting. And to join us for this Oscars prediction show, we have to uphold the tradition, I should say, of Oscars predictions with our friend, Laron Chapman, you people, writer, director, producer, filmmaker here in Oklahoma. Laron, so good to see you. Welcome back to the Cinematic Schematic.
Man, it's really good to be back. It does feel like it's been ages, but I mean, thankfully, during this pandemic, we had the comfort of a lot of films available on streaming for us to watch. A lot of those being these Oscar-nominated films. So I'm very excited to talk about them.
That's right. We have some great movies to talk about. I would just say some great movies to talk about. We'll get into impressions here in a moment, but hey, this is looking like a pretty outstanding lineup of films nominated this year. So now, before we jump into our conversation here, I do want to remind you listeners that if you enjoy the conversation Laron and I have today, we encourage you to head on over to your preferred podcast app, whether it's Apple Podcasts, whether it's Google Play, whatever your preferred podcast app is, maybe it's Spotify. Please make sure to either follow or subscribe and then leave us a rating and a review. That really, at this point in the game, is the best, most effective way to support the show. All right. Now, Laron, it has, as we just noted, it's been a hot minute. How are you doing in this world of 2021?
I think the word is adjusting, It's one of those Twilight Zone eras that we're living through, and, we're all flying by the seat of our own, pants. And I just think that, it's something that it's unprecedented. So we're taking it with stride as things come. So, but in a nutshell, I'm doing pretty good. Now that I'm fully vaccinated and ready to go back out into the world and start, experiencing life and watching more films with audiences this time.
Yes, most definitely. Laron, I'm right there with you. Fully vaccinated actually, Oscars Sunday is my full vaccination date. So I had set 2 weeks after my second shot of good old Pfizer. So I am right there with you. I'm super excited to get back to watching movies in the theater. As I like to say, go to church on Sunday morning, my church being the movie theater. So, I'm really looking forward to that communal experience, bumping into friends like yourself at the same movie that we just happen to walk into at the same time frequently for those post-film chats. And of course, doing more podcasts like this, hopefully very, very soon, face-to-face. Now, 2020, of course, was obviously a wild year, and it left many of the usual suspects off the table in terms of major studio films being nominated. I'm not saying there were zero studio films nominated. I'm saying that it was definitely a different playing field than normal this year, with not as many major tentpole films getting released. I imagine with a lot of these marketing budgets towards the Oscar films being cut, and it really sort of provided an opportunity for a lot of these indie films or films that previously might not have gotten the type of buzz or attention, an opportunity to go run toe to toe with the big dogs. So, I mean, that's sort of my take, Laron, about how this year's different from an awards perspective. How do you think what we experienced last year has impacted the films nominated?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head there. I think the most exciting thing to come out of this is that these indie films are finally getting audiences, or at least the audiences they deserve. Every year we see films that you and I have seen or have heard about. A handful of people may have, but generally speaking, we're not viewed by a larger mass of an audience. And I think that what this has done is basically repurposed that in a way and made them available to people. So audiences are watching films that they probably ordinarily would not have gone to see or had a chance to, because they're consuming content. And when the content is available, as many of these films have been on streaming services, they're actually getting a chance to participate in this process, and actually, go into the Oscars as more informed viewers as we normally are. So I think it's exciting. I think it's an exciting time to be an independent filmmaker, in that respect. So yeah, I think it's helped those indie filmmakers, and it's kind of humbled the studio filmmakers. Let's put it that way.
Well, most definitely. I mean, just looking at the best picture nominees, for example, like the biggest studio films were Judas and the Black Messiah and Mank. Like, I mean, I guess, and Trial of the Chicago 7, right? Netflix films, but these are not these are like any other year, these would actually probably be the smaller fish in the pond rather than in terms of the things getting the push. But this year, these are the quote unquote big studio films that are leading the pack. And again, of course, Sound of Metal is an Amazon produced film. I don't want to take away from the fact that most of these films are still bankrolled by major studios, but these are like the films that are typically really released in a much more quiet way that are often drowned out by larger, studio blockbusters, for example. So, different playing field. I mean, overall, Laron, what did you make of this year's nominations? Were you pleased?
This is the most pleased I've been with the nominations in quite some time. I woke up to the Oscars that morning, the Oscar nominations that morning, and was surprised to see just the widespread diversity, both from ethnicity. We've seen there's multiple people of color from all different races, and also to see two women nominated for director. We've been asking for this for years. This year, there was probably 4 or 5 viable options for it, and 2 of the deserving ones got nominated. So it was just really nice to see the Oscars reflect, the full scale of filmmakers, and not just one demographic or one type of movie. So I think I was really pleased with them.
Yeah, no, I'm on that same page with you. I mean, the diversity we saw in the nominees, and again, just looking at even stuff like Best Adapted Screenplay, Borat's getting an Oscar-nominated Borat film. We got, of course, Minari, which was a film that was filmed right here in our home state of Oklahoma, really getting a lot of love. So I just, it's interesting. I would say that it took a pandemic to get us there, but like a lot of those really big budget films that sat on the sideline really allowed diverse filmmakers to have more of a voice or a seat at the Oscars table this year.
Absolutely.
One of the things I want to call out here is Apple has entered the fray, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, I'm not saying they're sweeping the floors, but Apple has a nomination, Greyhound for Best Sound, and then Wolfwalkers for Best Animated Film. So, a few years ago, we got Netflix entering the mold. We've got an Amazon who's trying to bet bigger on the Oscars. And now, welcome another streaming service, Apple. I guess just Apple TV. I guess Apple TV Plus, whatever. Welcome to the Oscars. More streaming services, less studio films. Again, wild year. So, Laron, I guess last question I want to just touch on before we dive into the nominations this year. It's been a very interesting year for award shows. And listen, there's not like a great solution, but I'm just being transparent. There's not a great solution. Each of the approaches I've seen, whether it's the Emmys or the Grammys, they've all been different, and some of them have worked much better than others. What are you expecting to see in from a format perspective and even from a show perspective at the Oscars this year?
I'm hoping some hybrid of them. I agree with you. There's been, in particular, like the Grammys that just, that wasn't too long ago. I actually like the approach they used quite a bit. The more relaxed approach. It felt like the Golden Globes all over again. Now, the Golden Globes this year, I thought, went kind of poorly.
Very.
It was very impersonal. So I hope as far away from whatever they did with that ceremony is what we get at the Oscars this year. And I think given where we are as a country, with vaccinations, with all of with the temperament being a little bit different from where we were a year ago, that we'll be in a place where we'll see more interactive, like more faces, more like in person, interviews, more in person speeches, so. I'm looking forward to that, and I'm hoping that it's more of the latter for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I kind of liked the touch we saw. I think it was the Emmys in the fall, like so much earlier. They actually had the awards like delivered to the people, which is kind of bizarre. I don't even want to think about the logistics of that, but and maybe it was possible it was staged, but they somehow made it at least appear that the winners didn't know they were winning until they won, but then they got the trophy like handed to them. There was a lot of different creative approaches to that. I kind of like that touch. I would love for us to avoid muting Daniel Kaluuya on a Zoom call when he's trying to give a very important speech. Let's avoid that, please.
Yes.
There was was it the Golden Globes? I think it was the Golden Globes. Really, what I think one of the cool ideas, again, listeners and Laron, correct me if I'm off base. I think they were the one who would cut to like the people in the breakout rooms, like in between the commercial breaks. I really like that idea. They just totally like messed up the execution. I thought it'd be kind of cool if you have all the nominees in a room talking to each other and you just kind of cut to them having like these like being a fly on the wall conversations, even if like 15 seconds or something in between, going to and from commercial. I really like that idea. But like apparently those people, from what I understand, did not understand that they were in breakout rooms that were being aired on television. So they were all really kind of awkward and weird.
Yeah, for sure. It's like there were some growing pains for sure with that particular ceremony. I agree, but it is interesting, and I'm hoping again that we can get to a place where that with the traditional vibe that we're used to, with seeing it, because the whole beauty of these ceremonies is the surprise, the surprise of the winners, the surprise of reaction. So when it feels rehearsed or it's pre-recorded or it has any of that touch to it, then it kind of takes away from why we watch these award ceremonies to begin with, and it is to get candid moments from the stars as they're accepting these awards. So.
Mm-hmm. One thing I'll throw out there too, and I think I said this before on somewhere on the Cinematic Schematic. I can't remember if it was an Oscar show or what. It's not film or television, but the video game awards do and I'm not saying that show is perfect by any means, but I will say in terms of the virtual experience, did a lot of really, really cool stuff. They were even able to incorporate like their orchestra, like which has been one of the staples of that show for the last few years. But so I don't know. I really feel like I don't know. Gaming's obviously a totally different media and whatnot, but I was like, hey, there's some. That was in December, and I was like, I feel like they did it pretty well. I mean, I would say it's the one I walked away feeling the least frustrated / confused / uncomfortable by. That I, again, we'll see if anyone in Hollywood's paying attention, but I think there's definitely some ideas that they could grab for there. Okay, so what we're saying here is it's going to be weird, and we're not sure what to expect.
Exactly.
Definitely the 2021 Oscars. Okay, Laron, we're going to move into nominations. Last thing. Just gotta leave it here. Can you believe it was last year's show that Bong Joon-ho swooped in and cleaned up, and we all wanted it to happen but didn't believe it would actually happen? That was the last year's ceremony. I feel like we've lived 10 lifetimes since then, right?
Yeah, for sure. I've been living in the basement of that house this entire time. So, it was mind blowing, and I mean, obviously well deserved, but completely unexpected. It was kind of the like that'll never happen. Man, wouldn't it be cool? And then it happened, and so it was hard to really process it. So I'm hoping for some surprises this year. I don't feel like we have a Parasite among the nominees in terms of like one that just needs to win for any particular reason. Great films, I think, across the board, but it'd be nice for a couple of upsets in areas that we're not expecting. So.
Most definitely. Yeah, I would echo those sentiments. There's not like that one movie that I'm just like the true underdog that we're rooting for to take home everything. It really is a vast array here. So let's go ahead and jump on into the nominations. And all right, so listeners, if you're making notes, you're planning your ballot, now is the time you got to really like lean in and pay attention because we are going to start with best adapted screenplay. So the nominations for best adapted screenplay are Borat subsequent movie film. Still can't believe that. The Father, Nomadland, One Night in Miami, or The White Tiger. So Laron Chapman, two questions here. What movie should win, as in the Laron Chapman choice, and what movie will win?
You know, my heart wants to say that Borat subsequent movie film should get it, just so that we can look back years later and talk about how it won the Oscar that night and no one anticipated on it. But then, the more artistic part of me wants to go with the film that I think in particular that has all the momentum here, I think, is Nomadland. But that being said, if I had a preference, I would be going with The Father because after recently seeing that in theaters, I just felt like from a screenplay standpoint, I know it was a stage play before this, that it was the first time where the point of view of a person going through dementia felt like a horror story. And it's not just the sympathetic, bystander that's seeing somebody that's going through it. And we're sympathetic because it's really their point of view. But it's through the lens, of Anthony Hopkins' character and the disorientation that you feel, and ourselves questioning whether what we just saw was real or was it imagined, and it really puts into perspective what it's like to go through that trauma. And I just thought that it was just brilliantly executed as a piece of writing. So that would be my personal choice for it. But if I was to guess which one should get it, I think the momentum here is with Nomadland.
So the Laron Chapman should win is The Father. The will win is Nomadland. Okay. All right. So you and I are on the same page about what will win. I think Nomadland here has tons of momentum. I think it could actually, we'll see, the jury's out, but I feel like Nomadland has the possibility of walking out of this show with the most awards. So I think Chloé Zhao has a really, really good shot. If she doesn't win director, I would be shocked if she doesn't win best adapted screenplay, and vice versa. She might lose screenplay and win director. So I think those are both two highly possible outcomes. So if I'm hedging my bets here, I'm saying Nomadland will win. Should win. I thought, speaking of play adaptations of plays, One Night in Miami, that was a really moving movie, really powerful movie, a really upsetting, sad movie in some ways, because it's like, hey, they're talking about the same stuff in the 60s that we're talking about today. Sure, there's like some nuances that are a little different, but it's like, it just kind of makes you think especially coming off of 2020, a year where there were a lot of protests, and this was really something on top of mind. It really, really made you reflect on, wow, these guys fought for a lot of stuff and they made huge impacts, but how successful those impacts were in fulfilling their vision fell short in a lot of ways. That said, the movie is really celebrating their contributions to our culture. And also, again, speaking as a non-member of the African-American Black community, as a white dude, it was really interesting to hear people within that community, those characters, really talk to each other about race and what that means to them. What is the right way and the wrong way to approach these things. I found all that to just make for some really, really great character work. Loved the acting, loved the writing. Again, it felt like sort of like a stage play. So that is my preferred pick for should win, One Night in Miami by Kemp Powers, but Nomadland, I think, is going to take home the gold. So let's move on to original screenplay. So in original screenplay, we've got Judas and the Black Messiah, Minari, Promising Young Woman, The Sound of Metal, and The Trial of the Chicago 7. Now, Laron, I feel like anytime Aaron Sorkin shows up, he's like the 800-pound gorilla, right? Like,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I feel like this is a really outstanding category. Like, I think
Yes.
all of these are A plus plus. So tell me, who do you think should win? So the Laron Chapman choice, and who will actually get the trophy?
This is interesting. This is a good group of films, a strong group of films, and I agree that Aaron Sorkin, at the early part of this year, I would have said was a slam dunk that he would be taking home the trophy for this award. But as the year has pressed on, because you can expect things from Sorkin. He has these witticisms and these long monologues, and they're all eloquently, executed. But I think that as the year has chugged on, and as conversations, surrounding a lot more social issues have kind of been the forefront of our culture for quite some time, I think that Emerald Fennell's "Promising Young Woman" will be the surprise win of the night. And I think it's actually deserving of it. I think it's a very insightful Me Too era script. I think it encompasses all the anxieties in a really creative and innovative way to talk about sexual assault towards women. And I think that it would be surprising with it having just won the Writers Guild Award, the top award in this category for original screenplay, to see it go any other way. But if it was up to me, I would actually choose Promising Young Woman. So I think this is a should win and will win Promising Young Woman.
All right. Laron is all in on Promising Young Woman. So I, man, I'm so torn. I do think Promising Young Woman is going to win. So I think if I was hedging my bets and you were actually making a ballot in which you wanted to, win, I would put it on Promising Young Woman. I think that I would love to see Sound of Metal get a win. I think it was a strong screenplay. But you know what? I think the movie that's going to stick with me the longest is going to be Promising Young Woman, even though I feel like the ending is it's not flawless, but it's impactful. So you know what? Give it points for impact. I'll also be all in with you, Laron. Promising Young Woman, very timely, really clever, sharp writing. I think it definitely has all of the momentum coming off of like the different guild awards. So I think Emerald Fennell making a splash, which is a lot of fun because you and I just over the since we'd seen the movie, we're both like, I don't think the Academy is going to go for it. We don't think it's going to go for this movie, but we were wrong.
Yeah.
So Promising Young Woman for Best Original Screenplay. Now let's move on to Best Cinematography. So the nominations for Best Cinematography are Judas and the Black Messiah, Mank, News of the World, Nomadland, or The Trial of the Chicago 7. Oh, Laron, another really strong category. What's your take on this?
So I think there's only 3 films here that I think have that I would say the cinematography is in the forefront of something that you would recognize or remember from the film. And I think that's Nomadland, News of the World, and Mank. Because visuals are very important in all 3 of those films. But I honestly think this is a slam dunk again for Nomadland. It is probably the most beautiful film I've seen in the last 10 years. And I think that it just has, and that's one of the things that stuck with me, is I think every scene in that film is a snapshot. It looks like it could be on a postcard somewhere. And that space and, this kind of, well-worn terrain that the character is kind of on this spiritual odyssey of sorts, is very much, it's also very much a travelogue of what it's like to live out in that space, all the time. And so I think that Nomadland is probably the strongest contender in this category. So I'm going to say should and will win Nomadland.
It's going for Nomadland. Okay. I am going to differ. I think that Mank is going to win. I think Mank really excels in like 3 or 4 things. Not my favorite movie of last year. Not even like a top 10 movie for me last year. But I do think there were things that stuck out to me. One of them was the cinematography for sure. So I actually think that has the best shot at winning. That said, I mean, Nomadland, again, like Laron, to your point, is a very distinct part of that movie. So I would say should win Nomadland, but I wouldn't put it past them to give it to Mank.
I think that's fair.
So let's move on to best sound. We're gonna pick up with Apple's best sound. Which, by the way, Laron, did they actually narrow down best sound is now one category, right?
Yeah, I was doing that when I was going through the categories, is noticing that they normally had sound editing and it's just all encompassing sound goes to one group, and I thought that in a way that makes sense, and it also makes it easier, to narrow things down, because sometimes when you have the nuance of like editing versus mixing, like if you're not a technical person, you can't distinguish the difference between those two, even though they are. Um, so I think grouping them and conflating them in that way, just saying that which film employed sound the best in the film. Um, and so if I was to look at this category, I would go with the film that has sound in the title. Not just because of that. It's not a cheat sheet. I think the way sound is used in Sound of Metal is really extraordinary, and similar to the way that the father kind of puts us in the place of going through dementia through the lens of the main character. This really teaches us what it's like to have a hearing disability, as close as we can get as an audience, to understanding, the horrific experience of having lost your sound and what living life through that point of view is like. And I think that Sound of Metal is just so innovative in the way it uses sound that I can't imagine anything else in this category.
Definitely. So I jumped ahead here. So the nominations were Greyhound, Mank, News of the World, Soul, and then Sound of Metal. And yeah, I'm aligned with Laron on this one. Should win and will win Sound of Metal. No brainer. I think it's the biggest innovator of sound. They're the really most creative, and requires I think the sharpest edge in deploying. Having to think through when to use sound and how. So Sound of Metal also has my vote there. So let's move on, Laron. Best original song. Okay, I actually am totally clueless on this one. This is a tough one. So the nominations are Fight for You from Judas and the Black Messiah, Hear My Voice from the Trial of the Chicago 7. Oh goodness. Who's listen?
Look, see. It's a Yossi. Yossi.
Eurovision sound. By the way, the Oscar-nominated Eurovision Sound Contest. Low C, The Life Ahead, and then Speak Now from One Night in Miami. So, Laron, I know this is a category we often talk about as being an underrated category. What do you make? Which of these is going to take home the gold?
So the ones that I would say, just giving an educated guess here, Yossi from The Life Ahead. I've listened to it on its own and in the end credits of the film itself on Netflix. It's a really beautiful song, and it did win. I believe it won the Golden Globe, so it does have momentum in that regard. But as the weeks have pressed on, I think that Leslie Odom's "Speak Now" for One Night in Miami, which is also a great song. I think with him having a nomination for supporting actor, has a little bit of momentum here, where he's kind of in this respect, that he's favored in some regard. And this song is the only one I've seen performed live on several campaign trails and late night shows. So I think it's the one that most people have actually heard. And so if I'm going with what makes practical sense in that regard, I would say Speak Now for Leslie Odom as being the one that probably will win. But it would be really nice. Diane Warren has been to the Oscars, I believe, almost 7 times now and has lost each time. So it would be nice to see her finally sneak the gold in here. But my better judgment is telling me Leslie Odom Speak Now for One Night.
Okay. All right. So I think Speak Now should win. That was my favorite after listening to all the songs. Though, again, shout out to Eurovision Song Contest for squeezing a nomination in there. I always like it when those random ones make it in. But I am going to throw this, and this again is me throwing something at the wall, guys. Usually I'm a little more informed, but this year, this category, I have no clue. I'm saying Hear My Voice from Trial of the Chicago 7. Daniel Pemberton, up and coming, musician that I really, really like. He's been doing a bunch of scores recently. So, hey, I'm going to throw that out there. That's based off of absolutely no research. My gut's not even strong one way or the other, but I do think Speak Now is my favorite of the bunch. I'm going to say will win. Darts at the dartboard. Hear My Voice.
You love to live dangerously, and that's okay. You're allowed to do that.
I'm going to live dangerously, Laron. This is the year to do it.
Right,
so,
exactly.
All right. Let's move on to one of my favorite and more underrated categories, Best Original Score. And can I just say, justice for the Five Bloods. We didn't even mention how this movie was totally... I actually was very happy with the nominations. We're not going to go on this tangent too far, but needless to say, the Five Bloods, the latest Spike Lee movie from Netflix, one of my very favorite movies of last year. I mean, almost totally shut out, except for we did get the Best Original Score nominations for The Five Bloods, Terrence Blanchard. Oh, man. Delroy Lindo, though. Oh, come on. Yeah.
Another one. Gosh, yeah, definitely.
That was a big snub. So the nominations are The Five Bloods from Terrence Blanchard, and then Mank from Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, Minari from Emily Missouri. I think I butchered that name. I think it might be French. News of the World by James Newton Howard, and then Soul, also by Trent Reznor, Atticus Ross, and then John Batiste. So, Laron.
Yes.
Reveal what lies in the crystal ball. Who will win Best Original Score?
Gosh, there's only one of those scores. I think all of them are decent, but there's only one of those scores that made me want to rewatch the film and want to listen to it again, and that was Soul. And I think that Soul, has a lot of momentum right now. It seems like it's winning on all of the award ceremonies leading up to the Oscars. I also think it's one of the most innovative scores we've had in quite a long time. Mm-hmm. So my heart, just because of the Five Bloods being so shut out of this, I would not be completely upset if it took home a little bit of love in one category. But I think that it's a safe bet to go with Soul as the should and will win for this category.
I tend to agree on both counts. Here's my big question, though. Trent Reznor, Atticus Ross nominated twice, possibly split their vote, right? We've seen people like Amy Adams, for example, lose because she was double nominated and it split the vote and they didn't get enough votes to win. And then a dark horse snuck its way in there. Do you just think Soul is going to be that far and away a winner?
I think it's the favorite amongst the five, but that is a very interesting, an interesting point. I would say it's possible, but not probable.
Okay, I'm with you all the way. I'm just playing a little devil's advocate here, listeners. I think Soul's got this one in the bag, slam dunk, because, yeah, it's a great score. And here's what's great. This is Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross doing a Pixar film score. And, like, Laron, to what you were saying here, it's actually really innovative. I've listened to it several times since I watched the movie. And it's like really soothing. They're doing some really cool stuff, but it still feels distinctly like them, but also not like anything we've heard them do before. So that's pretty cool, right?
Yeah. And it's also really exciting that it's I don't know how often animated film scores, fall into this category. So it's exciting that an animated film is the front, or allegedly the front runner, in this category. So I think it's exciting for that as well. Just for something different in this category. So, but yeah, I think it was probably, again, one of the most innovative scores we've had in a long time, especially for animated movies.
Yeah, definitely. All right, ladies and gentlemen, place your bets. Soul is going to take home the gold. So let's move on to Best Film Editing. Now the nominations here are The Father, Nomadland, Promising Young Woman, The Sound of Metal, or The Trial of the Chicago 7. Laron Chapman, who will win, should win?
So this is an interesting category. If I had to go with the one that I thought where the editing was employed the best, I would say the trial of the Chicago Seven. It's the most where things are happening, in multiple different spaces where they're employing the editing in a different way, and using a lot of technique. But I think that this is another one of those categories where the Sound of Metal seems to be, praised for its technical prowess. That will see the momentum go in its way. So um, I feel like probably should win is the trial of the Chicago Seven, but probably will win is the Sound of Metal.
Okay. I will differ here. I'm going to say will win, should win the trial of the Chicago Seven. And here's why. Guys, courtroom dramas, there's not a lot of action in them. But here's what's really, really important for courtroom dramas. Big monologues, understanding where everyone's at, reaction shots, and did I say monologues already? Epic monologues. But you know what? If I already said it, it's got to be you got to nail those. Those are like super duper important. Triple so if you're watching an Aaron Sorkin courtroom drama. So I think this movie, it has an incredible editing work. The way it's cross-cutting the different points of view, the way in the courtroom you're getting those awesome shots of different actors reacting to things that are happening. I think it's far and away the best one. I do hear what you're saying, Laron, on the Sound of Metal, but I just something tells me Trial of Chicago 7 is going to take it. I could be way off.
I would love to be wrong in this category, so because it would be my preferred choice.
Okay, all right. Well, with that said, let's move on to best costume design. Now, this is another one of those categories where sometimes you get some real like surprise winners here, and the nominations are Emma sneaking a nomination in here, Mank, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, Mulan, and Pinocchio. Because yes, ladies and gentlemen, a Pinocchio movie did come out this last year. Not the one that you think came out, but one did come out. So, Laron Chapman, give me your hot take here. Who's going to take home best costume design?
So I think that Mank was probably, for me, my personal choice would be Mank. I agree with you. Not one of my favorite films this year. I do not think it's a bad film. I think it's technically well made. It's just one that didn't stick with me or resonate with me emotionally like some of the other films this year. But one thing that did stand out to me was the costume design. And so if I had to choose for myself personally, I think that was one of the categories where I think it excelled very well. That being said, I think that Ma Rainey's Black Bottom is likely the preferred choice to win in this category. And so I'm going to say should win, Mank, will win, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom.
Okay, I'm going to flip those. I'm going to say should win Ma Rainey's Black Bottom because I think the costume design's pretty stellar. But will win is Mank because I don't think Mank's going to take home any of the major awards, but I think it's going to clean up in some of these like smaller categories. Again, that's just sort of like my probably thesis for the evening, but I think Mank's got the edge here.
Okay,
could be wrong, but we must talk about best international feature film, which thank God they finally changed the category name. Oh my goodness. Not best foreign film, best international featured film. And you know what? Good on you, Academy, for not putting Minari in this category either, because it is a very American film.
Yeah.
No shade at you, Golden Globes, right there. Actually, JK, all the shade. I still can't believe you guys did that. So, first up, we have Another Round, and then Better Days, Collective, The Man Who Sold His Skin, or I can't
Kevada's
Ada. I'm definitely an American saying that title. Laron Chapman, who's going to win? Who should win?
I think should win and will win is Another Round. It's a really brilliant film. A dramedy, it's one of those things that normally you get heavy hitting dramas in this category, and this was kind of like the film being a subject about people who tried to enhance their daily lives by basically consuming large quantities of alcohol to see if they could. It's just an interesting concept for a film, and I found the whole thing to go down just like a good cocktail in terms of the approach to it. Because the characters are all loose and fun, and it's an entertaining film. I was surprised by that, how entertaining it was, just how crisply shot it was. And it's also done really good on the campaign trail thus far, and it's garnered a lot of wins. So I think should and will win is another round. If there's anything in this category that I think might have a possibility, is another film I have seen. It's Collective, also really excellent film, and it kind of follows the more traditional film that you would see win in this category. But I still think the favored choice and my preferred choice would be another round for Best International Film.
Yeah, I think this one's clinched. I mean, the fact that Thomas Vinterberg was also nominated for Best Director, which does not frequently happen for international films. They get it nominated for anything other than international film. In fact, that was our worst fear for Parasite, that it was only going to get pigeonholed to, Best International Film. But no, I agree. I have no doubt in my mind it's going to be another round. It's the one that's got all the momentum, all the buzz. It would really be a big shocker if it didn't take this one home. And I think it's well deserved. It's a great movie. I am a sucker for Mads Mikkelsen, so it gets brownie points off the bat for me. So another round will win and should win. Agreed. Now let's go to Best Makeup and Hairstyling, the same category that the Suicide Squad won an Oscar for. We got.
You see, this is the only reason why Borat should win Best Adapted Screenplay, so that we can come back years later and say that sentence and have it still sound ridiculous. But yes, proceed.
So listen, you think that that is ridiculous, but we have something nearly as ridiculous this year. So we've got Emma for Best Makeup and Hairstyling. Here's the ridiculous one: Hillbilly Elegy. Laron, I haven't watched this movie. I don't want to watch this movie. I read the book many years ago, and I like things about the book. I actually relate to the book in a lot of ways, but also, it's a nonfiction, not a drama book, not a fiction. So there's that perspective. And B, I just don't think the world needed this movie right now. And C, that makeup is really bad. That makeup is very bad. And it's like, I don't know these people. I don't keep up with makeup artists. These must be Aaron Kruger, Mikash, Patricia Delhaney, and Matthew Mungle must be really loved people because in the industry, because like I straight up just from the trailers and like about the 15 minutes of the movie I have seen when I turned it on, the makeup was real bad. But I also, just because the Academy is going to do what it does sometimes, I have the deep feeling in the pit of my stomach that Hillbilly Elegy is going to end up with more Oscars than I don't know, other masterpieces such as The Irishman. So anyway, Hillbilly Elegy was nominated, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, and then Mank and Pinocchio. So Laron Chapman, what do you think about Hillbilly Elegy's makeup? Who should win? Who will win?
The funny thing is, there's just so many things problematic with that film. One, the intention of why it was made, yes. The overall premise of the story. That being said, I have seen it. I do not think it is a terrible film. I went into it thinking it was going to be a terrible film, and wound out with it being, middlingly entertaining with a few good performances in it. But that being said, the holes in the story lie all with, again, the initial premise and intention for why it was made. I think the makeup in the film is pretty horrid because it's the first thing you notice in the trailers without even seeing the film is that makeup has been employed. You can see that the actor, it's like everything not to do with hair and makeup and styling is to make it apparent that it was used, so it's interesting that this has garnered, Oscar, an Oscar nomination, but this feels more like a pity nomination more than anything else. So
I hope you're right.
So I hope I'm right too. But sure, I think if I'm looking at this category, I think probably the strongest one here is probably Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. I think the transformation for Viola Davis is incredible. So I think that would be my pick for should and will win for best makeup and hairstyle.
Okay. I really consider that. I thought really hard about that one too. I am going to take a different route. I
Okay.
think should win is Emma, and I'm just throwing that out there because I don't know that Emma's going to win anything. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's going to go home empty-handed. But it was a great little movie that I really, really liked. That I just would love to get some attention. That I think overwhelmingly people didn't see because it came out right after. Like, I mean, theaters were technically still open, but everyone had stopped going to the movies when it was playing.
Yeah, I remember the advertisements in theaters just as the pandemic was underway. I did get a chance to see it at home, but yeah, it's one of those ones I think just got lost. But it's good to see that it made it to the Oscars with a couple of noms at least. So maybe that'll point it in people's direction because I really love the lead actress in that quite a bit.
Yeah, Anya Taylor-Joy is so good.
She's done amazing things this year. So. But yeah,
I mean, like New Mutants, best thing she's done, and career maker, right? Sorry, I had to bring up that New Mutants exist. Okay. So yeah, that's what I want to win. I think Mank will win, though.
Okay.
Again, it's one of those things. My thesis for the night is that Mank is going to take home a ton of these like other like not prestigious awards, but sort of like I don't want to say technical, but the ones that aren't like acting or cinematography. Well, no, I give it cinematography, but it's not going to take home Best Picture. So let's move on to production design. In this category, we've got The Father, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, Mank, News of the World, and holy cow, how have we not talked about this movie yet? Tenet, the movie that saved cinema.
Right. It was the first one. It was the first blockbuster to come out during all this. Like, hey, let's give this a try. Let's test the waters here.
I have a theory, people have actually written about this, so I don't know how much of this is mine or just this idea. I think one of two things happened. Either Christopher Nolan really told them not to market this movie for Tenet for the Oscars, or Warner Brothers legit got really peeved off at how he was trash talking them while he was on his press tour for Tenet for the whole HBO Max day of release. And they said, okay, we're just not going to promote your movie at the Oscars because it walked away. I mean, I think there's like 2 nominations. So, but anyway, Tenet not really featured much here. So with all that said though, do you think, Laron, Tenet should win or will win? And if not, what should and will?
I agree with your theory there that I think it had a lot to do with his temperament, towards all of this, in terms of why it didn't perform better here at the Oscars. But I will say though, because I differ with you on Mank, I don't think Mank will. This is the only category I actually think Mank will win. I think the production design in that film was again one of the highlights of the film. One of the strong elements of it that I can remember, after seeing it. So I think that best production design should and will go to Mank, and I am placing my bets that it will be the sole Oscar that it'll win the entire night.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to double down, if you want to bet with your friends, you want to go all in with Laron Chapman, you make that extra bet. You say, not only is Mank not going to win very much, the only award it's going to win is production design. We're going to bet it all. Okay? We're hedging bets here. Okay, I like that theory. I can get behind that theory. Is it ironic that this is the one I kind of want to give to I want to give to Ma Rainey's Black Bottom? I think you're right. I think Mank will win this one. Actually, I'm pretty confident Mank will take this one. But Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, I really, really liked the design. I really thought it was strong, visually strong. Yeah. Anyway,
I like the design for sure of virtually all of these films. I think with Ma Rainey, with it being more quaint of a production in terms of like they kind of are relegated to just a couple of areas.
Yeah.
With it, I mean, and that's just a limitation because the writing itself is just in a few spaces. But I feel like it's so much more elaborate in Mank, and there's so many locations, there's so many different, and then it's also a period piece. The costume and production design had to be prominent because it is also in black and white. So for it to still stand out with all of those things working against it says a lot about how it was constructed. So, yeah, I'm still willing to hedge my bet on it. But
No, I would say if I would say I agree. I think Mank will take home the trophy. Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, I really like it. But again, I'm with you though. I think all of these nominations are very strong. Let's move on to Best Animated Feature. I have feelings about this. I don't know if they're the same feelings you have.
I have a
Laron
lot of
Chapman.
feelings about this too, and I don't know if we share them, but I'm very curious to hear yours first, actually.
Okay. Yes. So who? Okay. Wait. Actually, sorry. The nominations are Onward, Over the Moon, a Shaun the Sheep movie, Farmageddon, Soul, or Wolfwalkers. Laron Chapman, who should win, who will win.
I feel like this is going to be one of those that's like if you bet against it, then you know you're just wanting to lose money. But that being said, I think that Soul is going to take the gold here. It's a Pixar film. It was a well received Pixar film. Again, it's won virtually everything leading up to this evening. Um, you know, it has all the momentum and the edge here. That being said, I'm very thankful to see some of the other films in this category. I was a huge fan of Onward. I think it was kind of a non-traditional Pixar film that came out earlier this year. I don't know if as many people saw it as Soul, but it's definitely a gem, and it had all of the heartwarming things you want in a Pixar movie, but the story was just not conventional like most of them, and so I really enjoyed it quite a bit. But even saying all of that, the film that moved me to tears was Wolfwalkers. And if I had to choose, I would choose Wolfwalkers as my personal favorite amongst this category. I think Soul was really great. I wouldn't say it was my favorite Pixar film to come out. I kind of preferred Inside Out, which I think kind of covers a lot of the same ground as this one. I think it was a little bit more emotionally gripping for me. That being said, I think Soul is a very solid choice to win in this category, if not my preferred choice. So I think it will win, but Wolfwalkers would be my personal favorite.
Okay. Okay. Good. We are clearly good friends who agree on movies, Laron, because I'm right there with you. By the way, I didn't see Over the Moon, but the rest of these awesome picks. I like all these movies a lot. I think you're right. Onward, super underrated. Again, another one of those movies that came out when the pandemic was shutting stuff down, and I think a lot of people just missed it. Even though it is now readily available on Disney Plus for anyone who subscribes to watch. If you haven't, make the time. It's great. I cried. It's a Pixar movie. It's beautiful. If you like Dungeons and Dragons or fantasy, you are going to find so much to love. Don't watch the trailers. The trailers made me think it was going to be a garbage movie, and like a lot of Pixar movies, actually, the trailers do not do the material justice. So Onward's great. I love Soul. I'm glad you mentioned it in relation to Inside Out. Both of those were directed by Pete Docter, who I just think is really, really innovating over at Pixar, a studio that is already wildly innovative. So just being able to tell these really non-conventional stories and really take like these big ideas like the soul. What does that look like? How do we visualize it without touching like different religions or anything like that? Again, really, really thought that was the way they sidestepped all that was really clever, while also hitting on those universal truths about what makes people who they are, what gives them energy. Again, beautiful, beautiful movie that I think, much like Inside Out, could probably be used as a tool for parents to have these conversations with their kids about emotions and the state of existence. I don't know. It's kind of crazy that like those sorts of topics made their way into to family films that like Soul. So I think Soul will win. I think it's an awesome movie. Not the best Pixar movie, not the best Pete Docter Pixar movie, but man, it's really damn good. However, I don't know if it's a soft spot for 2D animation. I don't know if it's because it's a sort of a fantasy and a part of the country we just don't see on the screen very much. But I fell in love with Wolfwalkers. This is a movie I also cried during. I thought the animation was just absolutely mind blowing. They were doing extremely innovative things for 2D animation, something that I think a lot of studios have moved on from and just assumed there isn't innovation to be left in that space, or at least innovation worth looking into. And I think Wolfwalkers absolutely did that. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse was nominated up against some Pixar movies, and I was like, man, this is just the best one. I think it should win just because it's the best one. And it's not that the other movies aren't good, but I want it to win because it's the best one and because the Academy always goes for Pixar. That said, I think the Academy, if you were betting, will absolutely go for Soul and Pixar. I think it will win. I think it's a deserving movie. Just me personally, I would love to see getting more players at the table and seeing the studio who did Wolf Walkers get a win so they can keep on doing the really cool stuff they're doing. So that is Best Animated Feature. Okay, Laron, so I got to make a confession here. For listeners and for you. And I won't go into the details, but the pandemic really messed with my like watching habits. So there was a lot of movies that I did not see last year. Things that I definitely didn't see that I usually go see in a theater as part of the preparation for the Oscars. The shorts. Here in Oklahoma City, we have the Oklahoma City Museum of Art. And I have a tradition for the last 3 or 4 years to seeing the best animated live action and documentary shorts. And though they were screened virtually, I'm very bad at getting to things like that at home. So I have not seen anything in this upcoming category. So you, my friend, are our only hope on these predictions. I have nothing to offer listeners. So Laron Chapman, we've got Best Animated Short Film.
Yes. So that being said, I have seen exactly one of these, so I'm not that much better. I still have a failing grade, so, but that being said, the only film in this category that I've actually seen get any kind of marketing or has been featured in many things is If Anything Happens, I Love You. It's like, a needle in a haystack here. But I'm going to go with the one film I saw and the one film I saw marketed. So my bet would be on that. Very apprehensive. So.
Okay. All right. I'm surprised. I thought you were going to say Burrow from Disney Pixar.
Oh, no.
Okay. Me neither. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So based off of what Laron, and hey, I think there's something to that though, to be fair, Laron, because the Academy members, they don't see everything. We should probably lay this out there for listeners who don't know. Like the Academy votes on this, but they're just like us. They have lives they live. They see lots of movies. They love movies, but sometimes they don't see them all. And sometimes the ones they watch are the ones that are marketed heavily to them because they've heard of it. And so there is something to that. Well, the only one I've heard of is XYZ. Therefore, it wins. I don't think that's always the case, but I would say if you were a betting person and you hadn't seen any of them, going with If Anything Happens, I Love You sounds like a safe bet, the safer bet. So how about Best Live Action Short Film? So these are quickly Feeling Through, The Letter Room, The Present, Two Distant Strangers, and White Eye. Laron, again, I am in the dark. Have you seen any of these?
I have seen 0 of these, but I am a voracious reader. And the only 2 that have gotten any traction in this category are The Letter Room and Two Distant Strangers. And the preferred choice from the different columns I've written is The Letter Room. So The Letter Room would be my shot in the dark option here. And if it's anything else, I'd say it would be Two Distant Strangers.
Okay. So The Letter Room or Two Distant Strangers. That does narrow it down to 50-50. So, ladies and gentlemen, check it out.
So if you're betting people, and you're sitting around the TV at Oscar night and you have no chance in hell, to picking which ones you have between these, go with one of those 2. And then blame me if it's wrong.
All right, everyone, start adding Laron immediately on Twitter. No, JK, please don't do that. Please don't do that. All right, Laron, and here's the funny thing. This next category, Best Visual Effects. Now, this is usually the one I hear all my friends who don't keep up with movies say, finally, a category. I've seen all these movies. Laron, I don't recognize, I haven't seen 3 of these, I haven't seen 2 of these movies. I recognize, the ones I've seen, I definitely recognize, but the other ones I'm like, I haven't seen or heard of any of these. So we've got Love and Monsters, The Midnight Sky, Mulan, The One and Only Ivan, and then Tenet. So, Laron Chapman, what will win, should win? Best Visual Effects.
I think the only 2 that have a chance here are Tenet and The Midnight Sky. But my preferred choice, and the one I think that will take home the Oscar, is Tenet. Because I think it was the one amongst these where the visual effects are employed in a unique way from the others in the category. Um, the visual effects are there, but they're not in the forefront. They're employed in a different way. They're more subtle. They're more part of the world. Whereas the other ones, it's splashy and in your face. And if you're going to do that, then it's going to be harder to pick between the three that did the same thing. So with a little bit of apprehension, but I still feel pretty strong about it. I think should and will win is Tenet for best visual effects.
Okay.
And Christopher Nolan will just have to live with the fact that he won an Oscar, even despite the poor marketing. So,
yes, take that, Christopher Nolan. Hey, okay, so here's what I'll say. Just a word, Tenet. It'll open doors. Some are good, some are bad. I don't know. Whatever the line from the trailer is that.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm with you. I think Tenet will win, should win, and I'm not going to spend time gushing about Tenet. We have a whole episode with Jacob and Zachary Burns doing that. And also critiquing it, to be fair, because I don't think it's even close to Nolan's best work. But what I will say is Christopher Nolan, as a director, is really good at showing me big spectacle that I never imagined seeing. Like when you see it, you're just like flabbergasted. You're like, what is this? And then by the time you wrap your head around what's happening, you're like, how the hell did they do that? And I think Tenet continues that tradition. The climax where there's a war going on, both forward and reverse time, is completely insane. The hallway scene in the airport, the fact that you see it twice, and both times I'm just flabbergasted. I'm like, did they shoot it twice? Did they do the same shots? Like, how did they edit this? How did they make it look so convincing? A lot of questions. So I think Tenet, yeah, I think it's simultaneously the most impressive and the least flashy. I know what you mean, Laron. Like, it's not as splashy or colorful or any of that, but I think it definitely has the biggest impact of the three films I saw in here. So I'm going all in on Tenet. All right, on to the documentaries. So we've got Best Documentary Feature, Collective, Crip Camp, The Mole Agent, My Octopus Teacher, and Time. Laron, what's your take?
So I've seen 4 of the 5 in this category. I enjoyed all 4 of those films quite a bit. I think Time is one of those films that is timely and is obviously of the now. Right now, it's dealing a lot with the prison system and the way laws are kind of disproportionately in favor of cis white males. I found that to be really timely and relevant right now, and I did think it was powerful. That being said, I don't think as many people have seen that film. Crip Camp was one of those films I saw at the very start of the pandemic and found it to be really insightful, but a little off kilter, I think, for probably most Academy voters' taste. And Collective, is one that I've read a lot about, and I enjoyed it quite a bit when I watched it. So there's a lot of momentum around that film also. But I think the one that was the most seen and also the most moving amongst the 4 that I viewed was My Octopus Teacher. I found it to be just mesmerizing and spellbinding the entire time. And also a very unique way to tell a story. I never thought I would care about an octopus at the bottom of the ocean, and that they would personalize that and personify him in a way. But I left that feeling enlightened, moved, and in a trance from just how they were able to tell the story the way they did. And with it being readily available on Netflix, I think a lot of people got a chance to view it. So that would be my should and will win for this category.
Okay. I think that's a great selection here. So, Laron, here's what I'll say. 1, where's Boy State in this category? I honestly thought that was a shoo-in, like straight up. I'm a little flabbergasted. That was my favorite documentary that I saw last year. I have not seen all of these. I've seen 2 of these. So that said, I am betting Crip Camp wins. Why? Rationale, pure rationale. Never bet against the Obamas. I know that sounds silly, but I'm just saying. People
Hey,
love the Obamas. People love that they're making Netflix films. I think Crip Camp's
Hollywood definitely loves the Obamas. So
yeah. And hey, I liked Crip Camp plenty. So like I'm not saying it's not deserving, but I just that's that sounds like a nonsensical reason to pick something, but I'm just saying they're the producers, and I think a lot of people, because they produced it and because it's on Netflix, people will watch it, and because more people watch it, if you're an Academy voter and you only watch one documentary, I'm pretty sure it's going to be that one, and that means it's going to get your vote. So anyway,
and listen, the reason I watched it was because of the Obamas. So there's that. So there's something to that. There's something to that theory. Um, if you were right, I will not be upset.
Yes. So Crip Camp, I think, will win. So that's the one I think you should mark down your ballot. I personally would like to see Time win just because of how timely it is. And I really like when documentaries, I mean, honestly, any of the award winners, but documentaries in particular, much like Best Picture, it's something about them being a reflection of the time we're in, I think stands out. Like when you look at what won Best Documentary 20 years ago, it just really is a little tiny glimpse into what people were really concerned about at the time. Like what were the topics that people really wanted to see documentaries of. So I think Time for me seems like the most pertinent to the moment we were in 2020. That said, that and Crip Camp were both very good. The two I saw. I haven't seen My Octopus Teacher, Laron, but you have definitely inspired me to carve out some time for that.
It is worth your time.
Very good. So another category I have seen nothing in. I'm ashamed. Best documentary short subject. So we've got Colette, A Concerto is a Conversation, Do Not Split, Hunger Ward, A Love Song for Latasha. LeBron, have you seen any of these movies or short films, I should say?
I have seen 0 of these films as well, but my educated guess would be again to go with the only ones that I've seen articles written about, reviews about, any kind of buzz or conversation about, and that would be A Concerto is a Conversation and A Love Song for Natasha. I think A Love Song for Natasha is a little bit more timely, much in the vein of Time. So I would say that my educated guess would be should and will win A Love Song for Natasha.
Okay. I'm going to mark that on my ballot. And then if I lose, I'm going to demand you buy me a beer or something. I don't know. So JK, I would never do that.
I will buy you a beer either way.
I am going to buy, I think I'm going to buy you another round. Oh, but seriously, LeBron, next time we see each other face to face, which by the way, I think is going to be very soon, whether it's a podcast or just hanging out, next beer's on me. And I'm serious.
Chicken Beers it is. Local Chicken Beers. Local spot here in Oklahoma for those people listening.
Really? Marketing for Chicken Beer. I'm going to tweet them that we talked about Chicken Beer. They are not giving us ad dollars. I go there probably at least once a week. So please consider sponsoring us so I can get some free chicken wings. But yes, Chicken Beer, best wings in OKC. Agreed. On the note of Chicken Beer, LeBron, we are now firmly moving into the big ones.
Yes,
so
sir.
We are going to start with Best Director. The nominees for Best Director are Thomas Vinterberg, David Fincher. I should probably mention the movies. Thomas Vinterberg is Another Round. David Fincher is Mank. Lee Isaac Chung for Minari. Chloé Zhao for Nomadland. And then Emerald Fennell for Promising Young Woman. Holy cow. What a category. This is such a great list of directors. It's so tough. And Laron, I'm going to get your take here in a second. But no matter if we agree or disagree or are happy or disappointed with the results, one thing I hope we can agree on is that I want to see David Fincher taking shots every time he's on camera. For anyone who didn't watch the Globes. Okay. Laron Chapman, who will win? Who should win?
This is an excellent group, and there's actually a surprise here. Thomas Vinterberg was not expected to be in this category at all. He snuck his way into this. I don't think it's undeserving by any means. I think Another Round was an excellent film. I think I would have preferred to have seen Regina King in this category because I think One Night in Miami was a really excellent film this year. And she's just been on a stride the last, I'd say really her whole career, but has gotten a lot of attention as of recently with her Oscar win, her Emmy win for Watchmen. She's just been doing really incredible things in front of and behind the camera. So with that snub being said, looking at the ones that are here, my personal favorite film would have been Nomadland. Chloé Zhao, I think, directed the best film this year. I think the momentum's in her favor. She won the DGA. You're looking at the same people. Voting against the DGA is kind of a hard thing to do when it's the same voter pool. And I think this is not a pity win. I think she directed the most poetic film of the year. And this would, put her in the place of being only the second woman to win for Best Director and the first woman of color to win for Best Director in the event that she did. So it would be history in the making. I think that's also working in her favor in this regard. So should and will win Chloé Zhao. Fantastic.
No, I think that's you summed it up. I'm not going to repeat too much of that. Don't bet against the DGA. So I don't think Chloé Zhao is going to lose. I think she is absolutely going to take home the trophy. Not only has she won the DGA, I'm pretty sure she's won like everything. So, like every award show she's taken home. And hey, Nomadland it's not my personal favorite film, but I can acknowledge that it is an incredibly well-made film that I admire a lot about, and I think it's telling a really important story. So that said, I will happily put Will Win down for Chloé Zhao. However, I think, and I couldn't pick, so I did my should win a tie, because obviously there's no ties to the Oscars, but I couldn't pick. I really, really love Minari. That is a movie that really, really stuck with me. It really... in a lot of ways reminded me of how I felt when I finished watching Moonlight, where I just feel like I was able to take a little glimpse at a person's life. The everyday people that we all probably pass in the streets every day, but really getting just to see what is the life of an immigrant, a Korean immigrant in the United States look like. What's that story? What is that day to day? And again, I always think about movies as empathy machines. Laron, I've talked about this many times. Empathy machines, as well said by Roger Ebert. So that movie really stuck with. It really had that similar feeling where I just was like, wow, there's a lot of things I hadn't thought about that I think are really important. So it gets a tie for that, but also Emerald Fennell with Promising Young Woman. That movie is a bold movie. I think her script was great, but I think her direction was better, actually. And the way she was able to really make you feel uncomfortable from sort of in a different film with a less careful director, you could say. The swings between comedic and uncomfortable could be considered whiplash. I did not feel like I had whiplash watching Promising Young Woman. I felt like everything felt very, very organic. I laughed, but I also felt extremely uncomfortable through very large portions of the film. And of course, after the film, immediately turned to my girlfriend. We talked about it for 45 minutes. And then Laron, you and I had a whole phone conversation about the movie afterwards. So with all that said, for me, it's a tie on who I would like to win between Lee Isaac-Hung and Emerald Fennell. I think they're both awesome, but I do think Chloé Zhao is actually the one taking home the gold. So 3 of the 5 people I'm saying are awesome. I do think Fincher and Vinterberg are good, but they're not my first choice or second choice. So let's move on to Best Actor in a Supporting Role. And by the way, we're not going to spend a ton of time on it, but the Academy's up to those shenanigans again, man. You're telling me that David Kaluuya and Lakeith Stanfield are both supporting actors of that movie? What?
Yeah. So who led the movie?
Who led the movie?
Yeah. This wasn't an ensemble. This was definitely, so that's really a curveball, in a way. Cause I would have happily seen Lakeith Stanfield amongst the 5 in Best Actor. That would have been nice, but it feels false in this category, like Daniel Kaluuya, I can see. But because I think arguably Lakeith Stanfield is the lead of the film. So it just feels weird to see them both in the same category. And I hope that doesn't hurt Daniel Kaluuya's odds.
That's what I'm worried about.
Considering they're both in the same film. And picking between them, because who has more screen time, is Lakeith Stanfield. So it's one of those strange things. I felt the same way about Viola Davis, being in supporting for Fences, but I mean, obviously it worked in her favor that year. So, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Let's go down the list here real quick. So we got Sacha Baron Cohen for the trial of the Chicago Seven, Daniel Kaluuya, of course, Judas and the Black Messiah, Leslie Odom Jr. for One Night in Miami, Paul Raci for Sound of Metal, and then of course Lakeith Stanfield for Judas and the Black Messiah. Again, I am with you, Laron. He is definitely the lead in that movie. The whole movie is framed around that character's POV, so it's very strange that he's in the supporting category. But all that said, do you think Kaluuya is going to take it?
I feel like Daniel Kaluuya was fantastic in this film, and I think that again he has momentum. He's won at every award ceremony thus far. I think that the Lakeith Stanfield addition to this category hurts his chances somewhat, for sure. Like any chance that he would lose in this category would be because he was included. But to be honest with you, my favorite in this category was Leslie Odom Jr. in One Night in Miami. He was my personal choice all year, even after seeing Judas and the Black Messiah. That being said, I'd be happy to see either one of them win this because I think they're both terrific in their respective films. So I wouldn't be upset with either. I'm really happy to see Paul Raci to sneak into this category. He was on my short list of supporting actors this year in Sound of Metal to get in there. It's such a subtle, quiet performance, so I didn't think he had a chance of being nominated, but it's really nice to see him amongst this. But if I'm going with my gut here, I still would say that it's a safe bet to give the momentum in Daniel Kaluuya's favor. But I think my personal choice would be Leslie Odom Jr.
Okay. All right. Now I'm double downing. I'm putting it all in Daniel Kaluuya. I think he certainly has the most buzz going into this. I do think Leslie Odom Jr. is fantastic in One Night in Miami. If he were to take it, I would be very, very happy. And even Sacha Baron Cohen, he has a slippery Chicago accent, but I just really enjoy. I mean, I know the Borat thing. He's fun there. I really like it when he actually chooses to play a character in a movie that's not like one of his characters. I like his characters too, but like, I don't know. It's just nice to see him just do more traditional acting every once in a while. And I thought outside of the slippery accent, I really enjoyed his performance in that movie as well. Again, I think this is an outstanding category, but if I was betting, and I would say personal preference, like I am going to remember Daniel Kaluuya in this movie for a very long time. And often, and actually, in many ways, may like really, my memory of Fred Hampton is probably going to be, this portrayal in a lot of ways. So that's where I'm placing my bets and my preference. Let's move on to Best Actress in a Supporting Role. So, hey, speaking of Borat, Maria Baklava. I just want to say out there, I'm going to throw this out there, by the way. Oklahoma Film Critics Circle, I actually made a case for her for Best Supporting Actress, and you people didn't take it seriously. I think she was awesome in that movie. Also, she had to work with Rudy Giuliani for a scene, so obviously that's good to Brownie Pants out there. So we got Maria Baklava, we've got Glenn Close and Hillbilly Elegy, we've got Olivia Colman and The Father, Amanda Seyfried and Mank, and Lord help me,
Yoon
Yoon.
Sure.
We'll try.
Minari.
Okay, Laron, who's going to take this one?
This was an interesting category as the year pressed on with all of the press for these different performers. I really think that it's a good list. I am curious about your vote for Maria Baklava because I'll tell you what, I loved Borat, subsequent movie film, quite a bit for what it was. I don't know if I've yet embraced it as the kind of film that deserves Oscar praise, but I have been wrong consistently. I was like, that's never going to happen. And then every award ceremony, her and the film have been getting buzz. And I'm like, well, if you had told me this a year ago, I would have said that there's not a shot in hell. But that being said, it is a technically good performance if you're thinking in the context of the film that it is, it's a great it's a great improvisational like she's in character. You believe her, you care about her character, you're rooting for her character. You are shocked and afraid for her character for certain situations she gets herself into, and how people are going to react to it in certain ways. And she commits. So I've come around to embracing this, but it is still to a certain extent surprising to see that in the category. Glenn Close is one of those people that I adore, and I have been fighting to get an Oscar for years. I thought she was going to get it against Olivia Colman. She's competing against her again in this category. It would be hilarious if she lost again to her. Olivia Colman is a consistent pro, is always great. Loved her in The Father. Amanda Seyfried is probably the best part of Mank. The one access point I had throughout the entire story, the only character that I actually cared about. But I think Yoon Jung-hyun in Minari has all the momentum here. She's won the major categories thus far, and it's a deserving, nuanced, beautiful, poised performance. So I would love to see her get it, and I think she deserves it as well.
Yeah, I know. I'm outlined. And I know I mentioned Maria Baklava. I actually made a case. Film critic friends. I was just joking. I made a case, and I don't think she was ever considered. What I also say is, though, I'm also very shocked that she made it into the Best Actress in the supporting role category. I wouldn't choose her, even for my would want to win. I do admire what she did, and I think in a lot of ways, similar to Sacha Baron Cohen, she kind of put her life in danger for the role a couple of times, or so like there's some respect there. But I would also agree. I mean, I think Yoo Jung-yoon is both the will win and should win for me. Moving performance. Again, it's good to see a fresh face in here. So yeah, that's the one I tended to get behind. Again, having not seen Hillbilly Elegy in full completion, was not particularly impressed by what I saw. Olivia Colman, always excellent, as you put it, and Amanda Seyfried and Mank. I really want Amanda Seyfried to really get some love, and maybe in a different year, this could have been her year, but I just don't think it's gonna work out for her this year. So.
I think before we saw the award ceremonies leading up to this, Amanda Seyfried was really the front runner in this category. I felt like all the conversation was about her performance in Mank. I just don't think everyone's embraced. I think similar to us, like everyone hasn't embraced Mank in its entirety. There's not been a lot of love for it in that respect. But I think that she is fantastic in it, and I'd love to see her do more. Because my favorite film, one of my favorite films of the last 10 years, First Reformed, just some time back, rewatched it 2 days ago. She's great in a supporting role in that as well. She's really pliable and she's good in many different genres. So it would be great to see that. Same thing again with Glenn Close. I love her, and I really want her to win an Oscar. I don't want her to die without one because I think she's given us so many memorable roles. I even think she's good in the Hillbilly Elegy. I just don't think the movie's very good, and so I would kind of cringe for her to win it for this. So, all the same, I think that Yoon Jung-young in Minari is just the strongest bet amongst these other women. So, my bet is with her and hoping that it works in her favor.
Yeah. Well, again, strong category, all strong categories here. We're going to move on into Best Actor in the Leading Role. Again, this is, such stellar performances here. Riz Ahmed, Sound of Metal. Again, incredible performance there. We've got, Chadwick Boseman from Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. Awesome performance. I think one of his last performances. Anthony Hopkins. Awesome. Gary Oldman. It's funny. I know it just feels like bait. I actually feel like this is like, I don't know. It almost feels like he's done this performance before, but that's a separate podcast, by the way. And then Stephen Yeun from Minari. So all strong performers here, Laron. I just have to ask you though. I mean, is there even despite this being an incredibly strong category, I mean, do you really think Hollywood's going to pass up on the opportunity to honor Chadwick Boseman?
I think the momentum is in his favor for that narrative, of course, because it is bittersweet, it's heartfelt, it's his final performance. We've seen this happen before. These posthumous, Oscars go to people, but it never feels undeserving, because he is fantastic. And I think if you had me rank all of his performances that he was able to achieve before his untimely death, that would probably be the first or second choice. So I don't think it's undeserving. And I do think that Hollywood loves a good narrative leading up to it, and that, giving it to him in honor of him and of this performance and of his passing, is totally viable. And I think that that's likely how it's going to go. My personal choice would be Riz Ahmed. That was the strongest performance for me, the one that stuck with me the most this year. And it came out of nowhere for me. I've always liked him generally as a performer, but it just resonated with me, very long after seeing it. So my personal choice would be him, but I would be totally fine and happy, and Chadwick Boseman is the one that's honored that night. So,
okay, yeah, I hear you. I think I'm going to go with should win on Chadwick Boseman. I do hear you on the Riz Ahmed, though. He is really incredible in that particular role. The reason I say should win for Chadwick Boseman, but not only was Ma Rainey's Black Bottom a really stellar performance for him, a great swan song in a lot of ways. This man for an entire generation is going to be the equivalent of Superman. Black Panther is that movie took off. It was a huge hit. And I think it resonated worldwide. And also I imagine for, people of color, especially like people, little boys growing up, being able to see themselves on the screen. Like, I just think that impact is really, really massive. So I say give him the award, not just because he had a great performance, but because of what his
legacy award,
his legacy on Hollywood will be, It's almost like another Christopher Reeves type situation. Again, Heath Ledger, another one where you're just like, wow, you turned in an incredible performance. This award's not just for that. It's all the performances you didn't get to give us. Yeah. No.
Well, and I would also say, think of the incredible roles he's been able to do in his time. He played James Brown. He played Thurgood Marshall. He played Jackie Robinson. And he was, the first Black superhero. And so it just seems like what an incredible career, a short-lived career, for him. And so I think this would be a crowning achievement for him. So, again, bittersweet, but not undeserving, so.
Definitely. And, I think, again, not nominated, but I actually thought would have been a really interesting nomination had it happened was actually, I think, his role in Da 5 Bloods, another one of his last movies, I think was really powerful because he sort of represented this beacon of camaraderie amongst that group. Anyway, that's a whole other podcast. Da 5 Bloods got snubbed. Chadwick Boseman was awesome in it, even though he's probably technically a supporting role. All right, so let's move on to our last two, our penultimate award we're talking about here. That is Best Actress in a Leading Role. We've got Viola Davis in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. We've got Andra Day in The United States versus Billie Holiday. We've got Vanessa Kirby in Pieces of a Woman, Frances McDormand in Nomadland, and then Carey Mulligan in Promising Young Woman. Laron Chapman, what is your prediction here? This is actually, before we jump in, this is a category that I think has the most question marks around it. Seems to be the one people are debating the most online. So sorry, Laron, go ahead.
No, absolutely. I think all of the suspense that may not be with some of the other categories was just, was concentrated in this one area. This is the one time I think in a long time that I have, no clue, because if you're looking at the way this was split, Viola Davis won the SAG Award, Andra Day, in a very surprise win, won the Golden Globe. Frances McDormand won the BAFTA, and Carey Mulligan won the Critics' Choice Awards. So there's literally a four-way tie here between all these women. If you're placing bets, there's really no one you could give all the momentum to. Viola Davis has won previously. Frances McDormand has won twice. Andra Day would be a first. She would be the second African American woman to win in the leading actress. That's working in her favor. The only person I don't think has a strong chance here is Vanessa Kirby because she's won nothing up to this point. It's a really great performance and a really great film. But if I'm going with my personal choice here, it would be Frances McDormand. I think she gave the best performance amongst these people. It's a nuanced performance that I think subtlety a lot of times gets um, overlooked in this category. But that being said, um, like Glenn Close, like Toni Collette, like Julianne Moore at one point in time before she won hers, I have been wanting Carey Mulligan to win an Oscar since she started her career with In Education, and I think she's turned in countless incredible performances from Never Let Me Go to Shame, Drive. There's some Wildlife, which was also shot here in Oklahoma. I've worked with her personally. She's a lovely human being, and I think that she makes everything look effortless. And this was a character that was out of the norm for her in many ways, and I think she excelled very well. It's a compelling, layered performance. So again, not knowing at all who could possibly win this category, I'm going to go with Carey Mulligan as my choice, as the one here that doesn't have an award behind her belt, and an Oscar award behind her belt, and has the momentum to win. And, against the others, I'm going to say Carey Mulligan should and will win. So,
okay, you're going to go will win. Okay, all right. So here's where I differ. Carey Mulligan is my choice. I think she's my favorite performance. I just, again, the way everything you said, not going to repeat it. She just really turned in a performance that seemed a little out of her comfort zone, that also had to look effortless. And again, the ability to juggle the lighter sensibilities of the film with the heavier themes and those darker moments that she's forced to be in that movie, I just think all around pretty stellar. So she's my choice, and for me, it wasn't even a question. I think these are all great. I think Frances McDormand's very, very good. It's a very subdued performance, but also really, really excellent. But I have to say, I have to go. I know you're calling it a tie, but what I will say is, I think the SAG voting block is still the largest voting block. I think the Critics' Choice Awards, while myself, a registered member of a Critics Association, I don't think when it comes to the Academy Awards, they matter outside of a little bit of media buzz. So I am going to say right now that Viola Davis is going to take home the gold, based specifically on the fact that I think that there are more voters in the SAG block than I think the only other one that could give it a run for its money is the producing block of voters. And so, yeah, I would be surprised if it went a different direction. I hope I'm wrong. Carey Mulligan taking home the gold, I would be so happy, because I think it's a really awesome performance.
And I want to make two small points here. Is that the one reason why I think it's been debated so much is that two of the performers that are in this category were not nominated for the SAG. And so Viola did win that category, but without competing against two of her contenders here. So that's one of the things that's been debated. What you're saying is still valid, because the SAG has the biggest voting pool, but I think she had more momentum in that category because they didn't have as many people to compete for. So, but that's what makes this such an interesting category, because even with that, if you take that element out of it, again, as I've gone through, each of them has something working in their favor in that regard. So the only reason I'm going with Carey Mulligan is because she has been on every list up to this point, despite everything, and so I think the consistency is there with her, even though she only won one of the categories, which is the Critics' Choice. I still feel like she might be the one who if you're splitting hairs here and thinking to it, well, we should go with Viola, but we did just give it to her. Carey Mulligan doesn't have one. It's just, I don't know. And again, sure, it could go anyway. It could go anyway here. And I want to go back and say that I said should and will win Carey Mulligan. My personal favorite choice, again, was Frances McDormand. But I would be happy to see Carey Mulligan win it this year for all the performances previous to this and leading up to. So,
okay, that's a great point about the less competition in the SAG awards. So we'll see. This is the one that's got the biggest question marks. Again, my My heart is telling me Carey Mulligan. My logic is telling me Viola Davis. So if I think if you were hedging your bet, your safest one would be Viola Davis. But that said, man, I really hope Carey Mulligan takes it home.
Yeah,
I think it was a great performance.
absolutely.
Okay, this brings us to our final category, Laron, Best Picture. Oh, Best Picture. So we have the nominations are The Father, Judas and the Black Messiah, Mank, Minari, Nomadland, Promising Young Woman, Sound of Metal, and The Trial of the Chicago 7. This is a tough one. I think this is an outstanding group of films. I think Mank's actually the weakest link here. I think Mank's fine. Like, it's not bad, but it's definitely the one where I'm just like, ugh, I could take it or leave it. The rest of these films, though, I mean, these are all awesome movies. Like some of the like all timers in here. Trial of the Chicago 7. I don't know if it's certainly not the best movie that Aaron Sorkin's worked on, but I do think it's very good. Sound of Metal, again, just a lot of stellar performances in there. Really compelling story. Promising Young Woman. We've already talked about, Me Too era film, has a lot to say, but also make you laugh a little bit. Nomadland, very important story. Minari, immigrant story. Judas and the Black Messiah, a movie about racial injustice in a year where it's been on top of mind. And then The Father, which I think is just tackling a subject that's not often portrayed in film. So, I mean, overall, Laron, tough one, but it's the moment of truth. Who do you think should win? Your personal choice, and who do you think will win?
My favorite film this year was Nomadland, and it stuck with me. And I think it was. I think it will be an American classic. I think it's something we'll look back at. I think it's a film that'll be studied. I think the very relaxed vibe about it is what attracted to me. The most about the film. It's just how easy it is to get sucked into it. How absorbing of a film it is. The way they employed non-actors and made them feel organically a part of that world, and how Frances McDormand, who is a well-known actress but fits seamlessly into that same space, and then just the beautiful landscape that it's shot under. It feels like an experience. I left it feeling like I had a much bigger appreciation for this, and how they didn't view life, these nomads, as living a life lesser than us, but appreciating kind of the simplicity of life. And it just made me look at my own life a little bit differently, open my perspective. So I think it was the most moving film, and I think it has the most momentum of the night. I mean, it's won essentially every award up to this point. So I think the momentum's there, but I think this is a strong list of films here. Sound of Metal's great. The Trial of the Chicago 7 and Judas and the Black Messiah are touching on topical issues, so they have that working in their favor. But I really think it'd be a safe bet to go with Nomadland for Best Picture.
I agree. If you are a betting person and you want to select the winner, I think Nomadland's the safest bet. I think it has the best chance. Like Laron said, it's got the most momentum from all the other award shows. So I think Nomadland's got this one fairly clinched. I would love to see a dark horse. I don't say loved. I'd be interested to see if a dark horse came out, which one it would be. My personal favorite is Minari. I love that movie. Again, I talked about it a little bit, but it's just a movie that I think really helped me see things a little differently than maybe I would have previously. So, and just the idea of an immigrant story in America in the 80s. There's been a lot of anti-Asian sentiment lately that's led to violence against Asians. So I just think, again, this makes it a little more important in that way. Just, a story that's really trying to paint a different picture about people who had to sacrifice a lot and work very hard in order to get their family boots on the ground here in the United States. So, but I think Nomadland is going to be the ultimate victor.
Yeah, I think I agree with you about Minari. I think Minari is. Well, I mean, it's interesting to have been seeing this the onset of these stories from the Asian perspective. I mean, you had Parasite last year. We had The Farewell, which kind of covers some similar ground there. And so we've kind of been seeing this. I mean, to a lesser extent, but I enjoyed it quite a bit. Crazy Rich Asians, so there's there's been a lot of interest in this area and seeing more voices from this space, and I've enjoyed all of them. And I think Minari, like you said, it's a true American film, and in a very unconventional point of view. So if you were going with the film that kind of encompasses the year the most, and everything from a cultural stem, from the cultural aspect, I think that would be a solid second choice as an upset. But and also just kudos to that, be all the people that worked on that here locally in Tulsa. It's great to see a movie of that caliber come out of your own home state. So and to make it this far, so that's a huge accomplishment.
Yeah. Shout out to all of our friends out there listening for the great work they did on Minari. It is an outstanding film, and yeah, there's a little bit of that perspective there too, Laron. Like, hey, they made the movie here. It'd be kind of cool to say we had an Oscar-winning movie that came from Oklahoma. So yeah. Anyway, we'll see. Ladies and gentlemen, those are our Oscar predictions. So thank you so much for tuning in to hear Laron and I talk through each and every category. Laron, before we sign off for today, is there anything else you would like to add about this year's Oscars?
Watch them, and so that the viewership can go back up and they can stop saying that the Oscars are in the tank and that no one cares about it, because it's the highlight of my year. It's the Super Bowl of my year, and I do think it's very important. And I do think it brings up a lot of important discourses. It opens our minds to different points of view, different walks of life. So tune in on Sunday and watch it. I think that it's needed.
Most definitely. I think the Oscars are just as relevant as they've ever been. And I do hope that you'll tune in and maybe enjoy some Oscar-themed cake or something. Make sure to make an event of it. It's a lot of fun. And to Lauren's point, I alluded to this in the opening today, it really is like the Super Bowl for movie fans. I mean, come on. I mean, you can make bets. You can like really be personally invested in who wins and who doesn't. So yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting show. Now, Laron Chapman, where can our listeners keep up with you and your work online if they want to hear more of your thoughts on all the new movies coming out?
Well, you can follow me on Facebook and Letterboxd under my name, Laron Chapman. I regularly post reviews. They can also follow me on Twitter at the name's Laron.
All right. And of course, you can follow all of our work here on the Cinematic Schematic at thecinematropolis.com. And you can follow me personally on Twitter, tweeting about all things film, television, video games at C Masters Talk. That is letter C, Masters Talk. Ladies and gentlemen, make those ballots. Get your Oscar themed party, or not. I hope it's not a big party, but your Oscar themed evening ready to go, and enjoy a night celebrating movies. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We'll catch you again next time.